welcome to Roots of a City. Tonight, we start by introducing a story of Shakespeare, one of the workers of the Waltham Museum. He would like to invite you make a visit to the museum exhibition. Here is the story of Alton Shakespeare.
My name is Alton Shakespeare Webb. I grew up here in Waltham, Massachusetts, and I work here at the Waltham Museum. Went through the Waltham public school system and graduated, and then went on to serve 4 years with the United States Marine Corps with the 2nd Marine Air Wing Division in Cherry Point, North Carolina. After coming out of the service, I worked for the Newton Waltham Bank and Trust Company here in Waltham for 4.5 years as an auditor in the accounting department, and then I moved on to work for the town of Wayland for 30 years as treasurer and town collector. Here at the museum, my responsibilities are really seek out grants for the museum. That's monies that we hope to receive from through the city or through the state, federal government, the community block grants. We write to foundations throughout the Massachusetts, in New York State, also Washington D.C., in hopes of getting funds for the museum. The money is used, of course, to support the museum in many ways, to present the history and the rich history of Waltham to the citizens, trying to work with the schools and the children in the schools to tell them the great history of Waltham.
Is to get them here, and we need improvements in the tourism area, tourism council, and in the Chamber of Commerce area, and other helpful sources to make the museum aware to all the visitors throughout the community and throughout the world, because we have a great story to tell, and we're now working on that problem of getting more visitors. But that is not discouraging us, because we realize a museum is necessary whether hundreds of visitors come or not, because we have a permanent place for the history of Waltham. Yeah, the museum will continue with its mission of telling the great history of Waltham, Massachusetts. Things like the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, the invention of interchangeable parts by the watch factory, power steering, chalk crayon, tremendous history. But to supplement that, to make it attractive, there'll be a changing exhibits to attract visitors to come back again to see the museum once more. And that'll be centered around nostalgia items of the past. The old black iron stoves and the old kitchens, the old general stores and the blacksmith shops. But in order to accomplish that, we need the rest of the building. We need more storage room, and that's where we stand right now.
We have a situation where we have more artifacts than we have room. Right now we have just the first floor here in 25 Lexington Street. We'd like to get the second floor where we can bring all the artifacts over from the Charles Street Museum.
We're hoping in the future we can expand, and as we expand, that will give more room to expand some of the artifacts. I have some in storage at the moment, which I could include.
If you've gone through the museum, you've seen, for example, the military room. He has probably twice as much stuff over in Charles Street that he can put into the military room upstairs. There'd be a kitchen, an old kitchen with the wooden, with the old, what do you call them, the black iron stoves. There'd be a blacksmith store. There'd be a bedroom from the 1890s, and he's just got an endless supply of artifacts that unfortunately we can't bring over here because we don't have the space.
What we plan to do with this expansion is start contacting some of the schools, bringing in groups of various segments of the population and exposing them to some of the history of Waltham from the early days of the Indian settlements. We feel it's only fair that they should know the whole history from the very early days of this country that they live in and this particular area that they reside in.
Once the city, if it's a city council, I'm not sure of the politics involved, but if it's a city council, we want the approval to unlock the door and start bringing stuff over. Now, there's also an elevator that's been approved for the building. When that comes, I can use that to carry the heavy stuff up to the second floor and also provide transportation for people who can't climb the stairs. But it's going to be a fantastic museum when it's finally finished. The big thing is we need to get the second floor of the building. I don't know what the holdup is on it.
I'm standing in the front of the old Waltham Museum on Charles Street. This is an old building. It is full of items scattered on the ground. You're gonna see things not in order. It's a shocking image. This building of the Waltham Museum, as you see, it was established in 1971. And now, let's pay a look inside and enjoy the mess.
And exhibiting the history of Waltham to the public. One time we reached 4 levels of exhibits, which still, most of the exhibits are still here. But several years ago, the Friends of the Waltham Museum helped us get a new location at 25 Lexington Street. We thought we'd get the whole building because we needed the whole building. But it's not the whole history. We still have 75% of the collection still here at the old location of the museum. This is actual cloth made at the cotton mill. Cotton fleece and heavy Irish linen and sample cloth up here in the top row. The heart of a textile plant is a shuttle which shoots back and forth with the spool of thread in it and weaves the cloth. Now, he needed employees for his cotton mill, of course, and he hired farm girls from throughout New England. 1819 had come down and live in the mill houses along River Street, long row houses, which are still standing, and they would provide the labor in the cotton mill for the first 20 or 30 years. He would not use child labor. He didn't believe in that. Being a mill town, Francis Cabot Lowell and his associates did just about everything for the town. They put the churches up, they put the schools up, they put up what is now Waltham Common, was the mill's land for open space. They did a lot of wonderful things for the community. And you notice the little shears there that one of the mill girls used the shears to cut the threads, whereas the cotton is being woven into textiles. Over here on the wall, there's 2 great paintings. This is a reproductions of 2 great paintings. And we can see here in the first one, there's the original mill right here, the historical mill. It's now a National Historical Site, of course. And then there was the second mill. They corrected the mistakes they made in the first. That became the prototype of mills throughout the United States, because in 1817, Francis Cabot Lowell died, and Patrick Tracy Jackson took over. And he continued on the dreams of Francis Cabot Lowell. He went up to East Chelmsford where there was more water power to expand his textile business. Later they would go from Lowell to Lawrence to Fall River, New Bedford, and throughout the United States. And all started here, right here in Waltham, in 1813. These buildings are still standing. They don't look like that. They've been connected together and the roofs have been flattened, but they're still down there. And here's another view of the same two buildings with River Street and the row houses where the farm girls lived. Now, customers would demand that the cloth be bleached and to be dyed a particular color. So what he did, the Boston Associates, they set up a bleachery in 1820, the Waltham Bleachery and Dye Works. And it took the cloth from the cotton mill and it bleached it white or it dyed it a particular color. Now here we have 12 actual samples of cloth that was recently bleached by the Waltham Bleachery back over 50 years ago. And it was donated by Dot McQuiston, who worked there as a secretary. She kept it all these years and donated to the Waltham Museum. On the wall you can see the workers throughout the years. As a matter of fact, in late 1840s, the Irish had a potato famine, and Irish immigrants came for the first time and mingled with the English settlers and English colonists, English descendants. And they had a hard time getting jobs, but they'd work cheaper than the farm girls, and so in effect they replaced the farm girls in Waltham's cotton mill. Later on, other immigrant groups would come through the years. The cotton mill was very good to immigrants for over 100 years. So we were a mill town up until 1884 when we become another terrific thing happens in Waltham. But before we leave the early years of Waltham's history, I want to mention two more other great things that happened in Waltham, not related to the mill directly, but we had a dentist named Francis Field on River Street, and he was trying to develop a compound to fill teeth and to develop teeth. He left the compound out overnight, and he learned in the morning that he could write on slate. So in effect, he accidentally discovered chalk, in which also a portion of it was crayon. And he chose to remain a dentist, but his brother-in-law, Parmenter, took the idea and started the Parmenter Crayon Company in Waltham on Pine Street, first on Felton, then Pine. It later became the Waltham Crayon Company, and then it became the American Crayon Company, and about 40 years ago was absorbed by Dixon Ticonderoga, maker of pencils. And if you look on the website now on the Dixon Ticonderoga, you'll see one of the divisions is the Waltham Chalk and Crayon Division, still operating today under Dixon Ticonderoga. And finally in this room, the Atwood brothers in 1855, before cars, everything was horses and wagons. They weren't refining oil for gasoline as such, but they did make kerosene in Waltham, invented kerosene for lamps and for heating. And that's one of the great inventions of Waltham's history. Now this completes the early history of Waltham room. And next time we will be talking about, in the main gallery, other industries of the late 19th century. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
The early topography has changed so dramatically that it's hard to believe today, with all the buildings we have, that in those days all this was woods and open plains and an abundance of all types of animals. The rivers were filled with fish. There was no pollution. It must have been a gold mine, a paradise. I can only imagine what it was like many years ago. It must have been a utopia. I only wish I could have been living then. It's been a fascinating journey. I've enjoyed very much collecting, and I felt it was only fair to bring my whole collection. That was the idea I had in the back of my mind. Once I got established and had enough of my collection to make it worthwhile, I would donate it to the museum.
We come to the end of this episode. We thank you for watching us and hope to hear from you. Here is Karim Hajri, and see you next week.